Hello, it's Fred Dinenage with you again. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Going to be talking more about television and what it's like to work and live in the television world. And I do encourage you, if you want to have a go at it, do have a go, because it really is the best business in the whole world, in my opinion. And if you want to work in news and current affairs, as I've said to you before, you know, there are schemes the BBC and ITV run, but if you can get into hospital radio or local radio, commercial radio, just keep pestering the TV companies and eventually, I'm sure, just to get rid of you, they'll let you in. But I was lucky. I started, thanks to a girl called Annie Nightingale, on a show called Three Go Round for Southern ITV way back in 1964. It was a children's magazine programme. It was me and two girls, and it was such a lovely programme to work on because every week we would have pop groups come, they called them pop groups, and come into the studio, and we had all the big bands of the time. We had the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Animals, the Yardbirds, Mersey Beats, and so on and so forth. Every single band you could think of that were big in the 60s, we had them on our programme, and they loved to come. I love the Beatles. They were so easy to work with, the Beatles, and lovely, lovely lads. Fun enough, 2 or 3 years later, I was working with the Beatles. Ringo Starr asked me for an autograph for his mum, would you believe, who liked to watch How. I wish I'd asked Ringo for his autograph because that would have been worth a lot more than mine. The Three Go Round was a smashing programme to work on. We went abroad, and this was a time when people didn't go abroad. You know, the hoi polloi like me, the commoners, never went abroad. We worked with Morecambe and Wise on the very first feature film they ever made called The Intelligence Men. And I got on really well with Eric Morecambe because we were both football fanatics. He was a big supporter of Luton Town. I think he became a director there in the end. And I was a big supporter of Portsmouth. And for some 7 or 8 years, I was a director at Portsmouth Football Club. So we had a lot in common, me and Eric, and we spoke a lot about football. I mean, they were big stars even then, Morecambe and Wise. But they gave us so much time and so much encouragement. They were really, really nice. And that's what I found about so many people in show business. You know, they would give you time and then give you encouragement. We also got into a little bit of bother on Three Go Round on April the 1st, 1964. TV shows at the time liked to do April Fool's Day joke items to try and catch the viewers out. And at that particular time in 1964, the Beatles were huge and Beatle wigs were all the rage. Beatle wings looking like the mop tops that the Beatles themselves had. Boys used to wear them all the time, and of course girls did as well. So we had this thing on Three Go Round. How do they make Beatle wigs? How, you see? That was the first time I ever used the word how. How do they make Beatle wigs? And we said we found this little factory at Bognor Regis in West Sussex where they make Beatle wigs from the hairs on Beatles' legs. And we shot this film in a shed, quite a big shed, in a rather nice garden near Bognor Regis in Sussex. He was the home of John Miller, who later became famous on How. A very eccentric individual, very extrovert individual, very intelligent and very funny. And John was in this film wearing a white coat, and we sort of said he was the boss of this firm making these Beatle wings from the hairs on Beatles' legs, and there are couple of his friends who were in there pretending to be employees. And we had hundreds of little Beatles, not live ones, I hasten to add, little plastic Beatles, all in lines on benches. And they had various cutting machinery to cut the hairs on the Beatles' legs, so we said. And we did this whole production and this whole thing about this factory in West Sussex producing Beatle wigs from the hairs on Beatles' legs. There were complaints to the RSPCA about cruelty to animals, and we were named. Needless to say, when the joke was revealed it was an April Fool's Day gag, the whole thing blew over. But I'd never ever forgotten that from 1964. That was a really good time for me. I love working on that show. It went into 1965. We were doing lots of nice things. But I was only actually working 2 or at the most 3 days a week, and I began thinking to myself, if I'm going to make a living out of this, I've got to be a bit more serious about it. So at Southern TV at the time, the 6 o'clock news magazine show was called Day by Day. It was shown in the south and southeast of England, and it was an incredibly, incredibly popular show. It had hundreds of thousands of viewers, and they absolutely loved it. And I'd been a journalist on the Brighton Evening Argus before I went on to Three Go Round, and I thought I'd like to go back to journalism, to TV journalism. So I applied for a job on this programme called Day by Day. The editor was a guy called Terry Johnson. He interviewed me and he said, well, you could have a bit of promise. We'll give you a 3-month contract and see how you get on. So I signed the contract for 3 months. Day by day led me to almost 60 years in the television business, and day by day directly led me to a program called How. How did that happen? I'll tell you all about it next time. Join me then. Take care. Keep watching.